The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Apollo 13, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in this 1995 movie. Joining me today on the panel are Mike Denz. Hey, Mike.
Hey, good to be here.
And Joanne Mercier. Hello, Joanne.
Hey, Dom.
And Shelley Kelly. Hi, Shelley.
I'm doing great. How are you two?
Good. Thanks. Folks, I want to tell you to write a review of the show at Apple Podcasts and share the podcast with your friends. That helps us grow the show, reach more people, and that's what we're all about, having a bigger community of listeners. We really do appreciate that when you do it. I want to tell you about another show on the network you're sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Star Wars, and you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And finally, I want to tell you about a new thing we've got here at SQPN for our community call. It's our SQPN StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. And it's a gathering place for the community where you can get together and talk with other listeners and fans about the different shows. You can ask us questions. A lot of us are on there interacting with listeners who show up there. So definitely check it out, and we hope to see you there. Okay, we're talking tonight, though, about this particular movie, Apollo 13, which, as I said, came out in 1995, directed by Ron Howard with an all-star cast. And it is about the true story. It's based on a true story about the events of Apollo 13 in 1970, where right about now, as you're listening to this, April 11th, 1970, where it launched, and that had on the way to the moon, and had this problem, this accident most of the way there, and they had to try to describe how to describe it. They had to get home alive using spit and baling wire and whatever ingenuity they could come up with, and it was a near thing. And so it's a movie that stars Tom Hanks and Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, Ed Harris, Gary Sinise. It's an all-star cast. Now I got to tell you guys, I was looking at the dates of the movie, of the events it portrays. From 1970 to 1995 was 25 years. From 1995 to 2022 is 27 years. It has been longer.
Did not have to tell me that.
It has been longer since this movie than it was from the movie to the events it portrays. That's kind of a mind-blowing thing.
Wow.
No, what's mind-blowing is I'm the only one in this group who actually watched it.
Well,
not the movie, but the event itself. We all
watched
it.
Yes.
I've seen it all.
That's going to be a great perspective, because I'm glad you told me that, because I wanted to hear your perspective comparing what you're seeing here with what you might remember having seen it when it happened. But Shelley, you also have an interesting perspective on these events. Can you tell us a little bit about why you might have a little interesting more to know about what's going on here?
Well, Dom, from 2001 to 2012, I worked at the University of Houston, Clear Lake. And at the time, we were the repository, they still are, for the Johnson Space Center History Collection. And so that means that we had all of the official records, or a duplicate copy of what's in the National Archives, of the Apollo ASTP Skylab's space shuttle development and early space shuttle launch testing, and some Center and General Reference series. We also had all the oral histories that were recorded by the JSC Oral History Program. And so a lot of these men and that are portrayed in this movie, they're real people, of course, and their oral histories were housed at UH Clear Lake. They're all available online. A lot of this material is now available digitally. And so I actually met and talked to several of the people that are represented here in the movie.
That's pretty awesome. That's really cool. And the movie itself, and I'm going to rely on you both to kind of help to let us know where the movie might vary from the actual events. But the movie itself is based on, I know there's definitely stuff that varies, but the movie is based on a book by Jim Lovell, who was the commander of the mission, Lost Moon, it's called. It was the book. And Jim Lovell himself shows up in the film in a cameo appearance as the captain of the USS Iwo Jima when they at the end of the movie. So yeah. So
his wife is a cameo also. She's in the watch party during the launch.
Oh.
Did you know how the book actually came to the attention of Ron Howard?
No. How did it?
Okay, so Jim Lovell started writing his memoirs in the early 90s, and he joined forces with a journalist, and together they pitched it to some publishing agents. And it caught the attention of a man in Hollywood who worked for Ron Howard. His name was Michael Bostic. Well, Michael's father is Jerry Bostic. He's a former NASA flight controller, and I think, I'm going to mess it up, I think he was Flight Dynamics Officer, or FIDO, during Apollo 13. And so he's the one that took it to Ron Howard and said, you got to do this. And together Ron Howard hired two more people with Houston connections. That's William Broyles Jr., who founded Texas Monthly Magazine, which is real popular now. And Jerry Bostic actually served as a technical advisor on the film, along with another flight director named Glenn Lunny. I forgot who it was that picked up. I think Jerry Bostic is the one who's actually responsible for the fictional line, "Failure is not an option." Gene Krantz never said failure is not an option. But I'll hold that story until we get to that part while we're talking about the movie.
Okay, good. So the other thing I want to mention is just like a little bit of behind the scenes of a lot. They did a lot of weightlessness in this one, where they look, things are floating around them. They didn't do it with wires in this one, and it was way before you could do it with CG like you could do today. They filmed this aboard what is colloquially known as the Vomit Comet, which is the specially outfitted aircraft that flies parabolas, like goes straight up and then straight down. And on the way down is when you're weightless for several minutes. And so they filmed all those scenes several minutes at a time while the plane is nosediving to the earth.
Oh, wow.
Which I would gather would give them a real sense of peril that they wanted to get from the actors in the scenes.
I think it was 23 seconds per shot. 23 seconds of the actual weightlessness. And you can see the original plane that they used. It's mounted at the main entrance to Ellington Air Force Base right there in Houston, just a little bit north of Johnson Space Center.
Now, they had a lot. I mean, they had, they're crawling around back and forth, and there was a lot of weightlessness.
Yeah.
That was a lot of up and down.
That is a lot of up and down. Yeah. I can imagine what that was like filming that.
Now was Bill Paxton regurgitating his breakfast planned, or did they just like, hey, that's kind of cool, let's keep that in, because he actually did it? I wonder.
I don't know that one. That's a great question.
It's a good question.
It did kind of look green, didn't it?
Fred Hayes on the did he really get sick the first time up? That's an interesting. So we talked about the cast. So we got Tom Hanks playing Jim Lovell, the main character. We had Kevin Bacon as the backup command module pilot, Jack Swigert. Bill Paxton as the lunar module pilot, Fred Hayes. Ed Harris as Gene Krantz, the flight director. Gary Sinise as the prime command module pilot who got bumped for the flight. And then a bunch of whole other actors that you might recognize, plus a lot of Ron Howard's family's in this. Clint Howard, his brother, was one of the flight controllers. We had his mom played Jim Lovell's mother, Blanche. His father played the priest who was at the Lovell house during when they were watching the whole thing. His wife and his daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, the actress and director, are in a scene where the astronauts are waving goodbye to their families, at night there in front of the launch pad. So a ton of people in this. So I just thought it was very interesting, the casting on this one.
His mom had some of the best lines in the whole movie.
Oh yeah, when she talks to they want Neil Armstrong and Alan Shepard to distract her so that she doesn't realize the peril that her son is in, and she's like, "So do you boys work at NASA too?" It's Neil Armstrong. The guy literally just was the first one to walk on the moon.
Yeah. If they could build a washing machine to fly, my Jimmy could land.
That's
she delivered
great
that so well.
Well, see, I know we're kind of jumping ahead there, but that is such
I couldn't.
I know that's a great scene though, because the wife and the daughter come in to break the news to the elderly mom, and the daughter's the one who starts crying because she's so afraid, and it's grandma who consoles her in the way of saying, "My Jimmy could land a washing machine if they put wings on it." Like she's just like, she is sure as anything that her son could do it. I love that scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the whole thing starts with the famous Walter Cronkite voiceover recounting the Apollo history. You've got the archival footage. You have the Apollo 1 fire, which I think is appropriate to include that in this, where you had
Yes.
the astronauts, because it really gives you that sense of the peril that is involved in spaceflight.
Yeah, the thing about, what I remember as a child with all this is that this was so new and everyone was riveted to it.
Yes.
Especially after the Kennedy death. Now, I remember vaguely, the day Kennedy died, but as we get into the Apollo mission, the Gemini, and they say Gemini,
Yeah.
and I don't know which is right. I've always said Gemini. When you get into Gemini and Apollo, people were, this is what you watched on TV. You caught my mother would have it on and we would have to sit there and catch all the news that we could. But that Apollo 1 going up almost set everything back, because it said to people, how dangerous really is this? Because in the beginning, everybody's going up and down and everybody's coming back and everything's fine. But now and they never saw the stuff that went over.
Right.
All the misfires, you never heard about those. I mean, I've seen documentaries later on about them. But so when Apollo 1 had the tragedy, it was all over the place. And people really thought that was it.
It brings us in the generation of space shuttle and those accidents. Kind of like we're not the first ones to generation to go through seeing astronauts die.
No, but we hadn't seen that since. We hadn't seen the shuttle one since Apollo 1.
It was a long time,
right.
Yeah. Well, it's what's remarkable to me is, so it was only 7 years from when they started. 7 years in a massive government program is unheard of. Then they have this accident, and it doesn't really set them back. Within a year, they're back up and flying. They're on the moon relatively quick after the events of that fire. I mean, it's remarkable to me. Today, it would be years, especially after the last space shuttle crash. It was years before we flew again because they were so cautious about it.
It was important for us to beat the Russians.
Right.
That was it. We had to get there before anybody else. Once you get to the shuttle, now it's just we're going up because it's something else to do to push the boundaries.
Right.
And that's why, not getting too far ahead here, but this is probably what we're leading to. This is why Artemis has taken so long to get going.
Right.
Because we need to go back. We need to go back to the moon now, even if it's just to prove to people that wasn't a sound stage and we really actually went there.
It wasn't just a fluke.
It wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, I got thousands of cubic feet of records to prove that it wasn't a
I'm
sound
sure
stage.
you do.
Right. So then we kind of leap a little bit through time. So we get to we have the moon landing, and it's the party at Jim. I think it's at Jim Lovell's house, the party with all the other astronauts and families and stuff. Then we leap to Halloween of 1969, Alan Shepard being bumped from the flight. He was supposed to be Apollo 13, and Jim Lovell was moved up to command. And then, and prior to the Apollo 13, Lovell had only flown around the moon, had not landed on it. Now he was going to get to land on the moon. Then we get to 3 months prior. They're training for docking maneuvers. It shows how much preparation goes into things. And then we go up to 3 weeks prior, and this is where I'll kind of slow things down a bit. Because all this happens relatively quick in the movie. Like, I'd say about half the movie is to the launch, and the other half is after launch. And so we have this scene where Jim's wife, Marilyn, has this nightmare of something going wrong on the flight, and Jim getting ejected into space. And then she wakes to Jim explaining the mission to his son and explaining why he's going to be okay, why he's safe. And the son's concern is like, what about Apollo 1? can you get, did they fix the hatch, which is why the guys died. They couldn't get the hatch open. I really like that scene. I mean, it was really affecting, and it makes me think, like, just the idea of leaving your family to go up. Like, what, I don't want to say what kind of man does that, because that would seem like a criticism, but what does it take to be able to leave your family behind and take on this risk, and what does it take for the family, like a wife, to let him go? It's kind of remarkable to me.
U.S. Navy fighter pilot, test pilot.
Yeah, right.
Who had flown 3 times before Apollo 13. He was the most experienced, or one of the most experienced astronauts at the time. And the other 2 were rookies. They had never been up before.
Right.
So it was an amazing crew, really. And Jim Lovell was probably absolutely the right guy to be there at the time. These guys are amazing. They are so no nonsense, and yet they can be very down to earth.
Yeah. I mean, they select for certain characteristics. They want astronauts who are both, under pressure, they're calm, and they think clearly and calmly, but they also are fearless, in the sense of they're willing to take on risks and willing to go beyond. There's that weird combination. I mean, of course, the movie's called The Right Stuff, the other movie.
Yes.
There's that combination of characteristics that they're cautious but risk takers. They're, under control, but they're kind of wild men at the same time. I mean, you see that in these guys, in various other, not necessarily this movie, but in other times we've seen, portrayals of the astronauts as kind of a little of both. So it is kind of wild to see.
So that's actually one of the things that I love this movie for the storytelling, for the way they're able to take something that's run so technically and write it out and unfold it in a beautiful, not quite documentary, but in a way that we all can really emotionally attach to.
Yeah.
But the guys are picked. They picked from test pilots on purpose, because it's not that they ignore fear. It's that they have trained themselves to embrace it, accept it, process it, and do what must be done.
Right.
And it's a unique quality. And I think a lot of the current astronauts have that also, not coming from test pilot, but I really do think that it's something that they are able now to effectively train into them, how to respond in that type of crisis.
It was interesting to me watching the SpaceX Inspiration 4 mission of civilians last fall, and thinking about, like, these were just regular folks off the street. These weren't test pilots. These were it could have been me. Like, if I'd entered the contest, they could have picked my name and not the other guy, and it's like, how would I have been able to react? Would I have been able to embrace it like they did? I mean, it is kind of wild that you're putting your life on the line sitting atop a rocket.
Yeah, they weren't responsible for it. They were just there for a ride, up and down.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was the series, the Right Stuff, not so much the movie.
Yeah.
That I got a better insight into that fear. How they would train for fear, Shelley. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really showed a little bit more of that time, and then how they had to live this fishbowl of a life. Because not only did people want to know about them, but NASA used them also as, to
PR.
to gain what they needed from Congress and from the American public, so that they could continue doing what they were doing.
And they wove that right into the storyline of the movie by having Jim Lovell being on the tour of the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, when Deke comes up to give him the information about Alan Shepard. So,
I liked also that they kept that subtle thread in there about, now that we've landed on the moon, like, it's not as important anymore. The senator or whoever was like, should we be spending all this money? Later on, we'll find out that people aren't even watching anymore because it's old hat. It's like 2 after the one where they stepped on the moon. And we're all
only the third one.
Joanne was watching.
Yeah, I was watching. But then as a child, I had done a complete model of Apollo 11. I had one in my corner of my bedroom. That's how interested I was in this type of stuff. It was fascinating.
You guys see my Saturn V over my shoulder here on the call? Yeah. That's the Lego Saturn V.
Okay.
Watching them prepare, for me, the two things that struck me and that I can't identify with because I would be bad at both of these things, was the monotonous, we got to go over this, flipping these switches, when we do it, how we do it.
Yeah.
So the procedures are just like
Over
routine.
and over.
We just
Yeah.
do this over and over and over and over and over again.
Muscle
and-
memory.
Yeah, all of that. It's just so important. And the other thing is, I mean, and at least this seemed to be the drive for everybody. Is like, I want to walk on the moon.
Yeah.
I want to. That's what I want to do. And Lovell had been up there several times, but he hadn't got to walk on the moon. And they seemed to be indicating a little bit of obviously like some jealousy and rivalry. Like, Neil Armstrong got to be the first guy, and I wanted to be the
Right.
first guy.
They all wanted to be.
They all wanted to
They
be
were
the
all
first
type A.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that drive and the loss when they couldn't, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that I would not want to be strapped into on top of all that fuel.
Yep.
So I don't need to walk on the moon. I can walk on Earth. That's all right. So I mean, that drive and trying to identify with it, it's like, well, that's just what they knew. Yes, this is super risky, and that's why it's so awesome. That and I would be able to get to walk on the moon, and like that, I put my little thumb in front of it, and I'm gonna go up there.
And put your thumb in
like
front of
that.
the Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he
That
put
was
his thumb in
so-
front of the Earth.
Another visually excellent way of showing the perspectives.
Right, because we'd seen him do it with the moon in his backyard. Just I mean, such good work by Ron Howard there. I mean, just yeah. And to think of when this movie came out, the context in 1995. We had a space shuttle. We hadn't even started building the International Space Station yet. I mean, the space station wasn't until the late 90s, I think, right, Shelley?
I have to check on that, but I know the Mir was up there.
Mir was up there at the time. But like the ISS was not. I think that was 99 because we're approaching the 20-something anniversary of it. We had was space shuttles, and we going back to the moon wasn't even a thought. And so it was interesting when this movie came out how we would look back at that time. That was a heroic time, to think about. And we'd already had in 95 2 space shuttle crashes. When was the second one?
The second one was in 2003.
Okay. So we'd had just the Challenger.
Challenger 87, right? Was it?
The Challenger was
Challenger was
86.
86.
86, January of 28th.
I knew it was in
of
high school. I just
1986.
couldn't remember.
I was.
And the ISS was launched in November of 98.
Yeah. So that was. I mean, they're building it. I mean, obviously at this point, but it was still in the future. So you got to keep in mind. And now we've got private space ships going up. I think today we had Blue Origin went up again. It's
William
just like,
Shatner went up. I mean,
Captain
really.
Kirk is
how
in
in
space.
shape do you have to be?
They can send me up. I don't know.
Apparently,
Anyway.
just strap a rocket to me. I can.
So back to the movie, we had this really interesting relationship between Marilyn Lovell and Jim. It was there was no like real drama. They didn't play up like this I could see where some movies would try to play up a conflict. There wasn't really conflict. At one point, Marilyn said she wasn't going to go to the launch, and then at the last minute, she changes her mind and shows up there with the kids. But again, I think that's to portray this idea that some people were starting to think of it as routine. And
I'm going to disagree with you.
Oh, okay. Why do you think that she wasn't going to go?
I think that it was because she was so afraid. It's so much stress to watch him leave, and
yeah,
they would have. I don't know if Jim Lovell was part of the Apollo 1 investigation or not, but he would have been active and heard the talk and known about it. These were their neighbors. These were their friends.
Right.
And some of them had known each other before NASA. They'd known each other through the U.S. Navy program. So it's a very tight-knit community, and a lot of them lived in the same neighborhood. They had their houses all built at the same place. So the feeling I got when watching that is, she just doesn't have the stomach to do this for a fourth time. I mean, he went up twice in Gemini program. He went on Apollo 8, and now here he's going up again. And she's like, it's the kid's schedule. And she's giving excuses, and he knows it. She's terrified. And so, and then here's Mary Hayes with her children. And here's the veteran astronaut wife telling her how to handle the media, telling her how to be present.
What was the phrase? I'm proud and excited and something else.
Or thrilled. I know thrilled was it.
Yeah.
Thrilled, proud, excited. Yeah.
No, but think about it. I mean, these were families. It wasn't just the men that were involved.
Oh, yeah.
It was the whole family, had to buy in on this.
And I love the way that they showed that, Joanne, that he comes home and all this is going on at home and he has no idea what's going on. Dad, can I wear this? Sure.
No.
No.
I mean, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean,
classic husband mistake.
You understand? He flew a trainer probably back from Kennedy to come back to Houston.
Right.
I mean, so they'd get up, they were gone, they were training, and she even knew it. She's like, 6 months? Can you move it up 6 months? Are you going to be ready? I mean, everything has to be completely able to do it without thinking about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's very familiar with the routine.
Right.
And yes, they are flying back and forth from Florida to Texas. So,
And there's a lot of astronaut children who have written books about their parents, either who worked in mission control or worked in flight director or were flight directors or were astronauts. They were your neighbors. I mean, my next door neighbor was an astronaut. People at church were flight controllers, mission control. I mean, I've got a neighbor around this corner, even though we're 30 minutes away from NASA right now, and she does EVA flight directing. So, I mean, they're just everywhere here.
Wow.
You wouldn't know.
Right. So it's interesting how there's a lot of like foreshadowing, like superstitious foreshadowing in the Apollo 13 was set to lift off at 13:13 in the afternoon and enter the moon's gravity on April 13th. You know, they had I'm guessing it's probably a true story that on the day of the launch, Marilyn was taking a shower at the hotel and her wedding ring slipped off and went down the drain.
Yes, that happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, it's a portentous omen, I guess. That's what we're supposed to gather from that. So
she did recover it.
I would think you could. I was thinking I just need a screwdriver. Get the hotel maintenance guy over there. Yeah. I'm doing the dad thing. Oh, pause the movie.
What's her problem? Just get the maintenance guy.
Call the maintenance guy, get a screwdriver.
But again, how Ron Howard was able to just build that tension up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The foreboding. I mean, that's what it is. Because it's like watching the movie Titanic. Unless you're really uninformed, you know what's coming.
Right.
Not like the girls who were sitting in front of me at the movie theater on Titanic, who at the end of the movie said, "I can't believe it sank."
Oh,
yeah.
Oh boy.
I never laughed so hard. But most people knew what was coming in Apollo 13. But so how do you build the drama? And so he was building the drama. That was really good.
Yeah, but I think it's a testament to it is a testament to his direction. But you've got to remember, there are people now that don't know this story.
No, right. We're so far removed.
They really don't. I mean, in 1995, when it came out, there were a lot of more people around who were older than me that lived that whole episode. But now, as we go further and further away, and it's playing on every other TBS station on cable.
Yep.
They don't know this story, so they're sitting there riveted going, really?
I'm thinking
or they're starting to Google everything.
Yeah. I'm thinking prior to this movie, this event was probably less well known to people who hadn't lived through it, like among my generation, until the movie came out. And now it's part of the lexicon. Houston, we have a problem. I mean, that's a thing people say, Apollo 13, it's part of that lexicon now. Whereas before it was, for a lot of people, I'm thinking they weren't as aware of these events. And that's so I really credit, that's one of the reasons why we have movies based on real events like this, because we need to remember, and it helps to make it present again for later generations.
Yeah. And that wasn't the line either.
Yeah, I know.
The actual thing is that what was it he actually said?
He actually said, Houston, we've had a problem. So Swigert said, we've got a problem. And then Jim Lovell says, Houston, we've had a problem.
Right.
But that doesn't roll off the tongue as brilliantly as the quote, Houston, we have a problem.
Yes, it has a lot more punch to it. Some studio exec wrote a note, like, let's punch up that line a little bit. Let's just make it, we got a problem. We have a problem.
Yeah, Luke, I am your father. No, I'm your father.
I love you. I know.
Yes.
Frankly, Scarlett.
Yes. Just saw that the other night too.
All the lines
It's the beginning
that
of a
were
beautiful
never,
friendship.
yeah, all the lines that were never actually said in movies. Play it. Play it again, Sam. So anyway, that was all our trivia, movie trivia. So then we have this moment where Ken I almost said Don Mattingly, which is a whole
Yeah,
other.
that's a baseball
That's a
player.
baseball guy. I kept thinking Ken Mattingly, played by Gary Sinise, gets bumped from the flight because he was exposed to measles. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really relevant today. We can all appreciate having, you've been exposed, so now you're out.
You got COVID, you can't go.
Yeah, or you were around someone with COVID, you can't go. I mean, that would have been a big thing. And so Lovell is presented with this. He's like, at first he's going to bat for Mattingly. Like, no, he's going. We're not replacing him. And so they present him with, okay, it's either he doesn't go or none of you go.
Right.
I mean, that is quite the, that's a dilemma that like a little moral dilemma that Jim is presented with in that moment.
But if you look at the bigger picture, I would like to think that NASA people would have figured it out.
Yeah.
But if it is true that he figured all of that out,
The restart
did he or
sequence.
didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know, did he or didn't he, Shelley? Was he the one who did figure that sequence out?
Okay, so that's what they call in movies making an amalgamation. They use one
Okay.
character to represent many,
All
but
right.
Ken Mattingly was on the Capcom and he was instrumental in that simulator figuring all of that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, his being left behind gave him an advantage to know the mind of both Gordo and Lovell.
Yeah, he
So,
knows exactly. He knows those guys
Gordo
so
wasn't
well.
on the flight.
Oh, God, I'm sorry, wrong one.
Fred Hayes.
So he knows how they react. He knows how they would react in certain situations. So him being left behind has an advantage. Where if it was Swaggart back there, he had never trained with them, because if you do see in the movie that his crew goes off at a different time.
Right.
They're together. So this could, hopefully this is what did tip the balance.
Providence.
But I know everybody at NASA is super smart, so they could have all figured that out.
But I think it is a sign of providence that Ken was there to be the guy in the capsule figuring it out. I love that, like, the guy hands him a flashlight. Is that the same flashlight they have? I only want exactly what they have. Just give me the exact same conditions. I mean, maybe Swaggart would have done the same thing, but maybe not. I mean, it's just, but I love the fact that it just feels providential that Ken Mattingly is there and never got sick, never got the measles. That was the other big thing that they said in it.
And one of the things that, as we're talking about, did this happen? Did that happen? I really love the way that they were able to take scenes that were very full of technical jargon and change it so that they're basically interpreting it to you. So is this exactly what they had? I'm sure they would have only brought him exactly what they had. But to show that in the movie, they have to have him have that interaction and ask for it. Is this exactly what they have? And one of the things, we're not quite there yet, but I wanted to mention how wonderful the acting was when he says to Mattingly, see, I keep going back and forth between Tom Hanks, Jim Lovell in my head. But, but when he says to him, that was my call.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that. Is that accurate?
I don't know.
And, okay, that's the
idea.
one question.
I don't know
But the
all
other one
of
is, why? Was he like falling on his sword? Like, no, you don't have to go up there. I'll take the heat. It's my call. Because it wasn't his call. He wanted him on the flight. He could have been like, yeah, let's go together and ask what's his name.
But it was his call if they had already said, look, I can bump all three of you to a later flight and we'll just pull up your prime crew. So Swaggart still gets to go. And the other two that we're training gets to go. There's always a backup crew. I mean, I said prime, but there's always a backup crew.
Right.
Or you guys can we'll just replace just the position.
Well, either way, Mattingly wasn't going. So, I mean, I don't think he would have said, well, you two shouldn't go either. So.
I think in this case, I think what's going on is Lovell he's a naval officer. I think he might even have been captain at this point, but he was fairly up there. And he would have said, like, even if the orders come down from above, when he is the commander of this flight, and so it is his call no matter what. Like, even if he has no choice, it's his call. He takes responsibility for everything that goes on in that ship. And I think that that's designed to show his character in this moment, that Jim Lovell takes responsibility for everything that happens aboard his ship. And that's what this is. It's his ship.
Yeah. And he and Mattingly were both U.S. Navy. So, yeah. And he was captain at the time.
Right. Fred Hayes was interesting. I want to dig more into his bio, but I saw he was both a Marine pilot and an Air Force pilot. That's a very interesting move. That's an interesting lateral move.
I'll throw one more. He was also, he went to his training with the U.S. Navy. So he did his fighter pilot training with the U.S. Navy, then became a Marine fighter pilot.
Well, all the Marine pilots train with the Navy. They all train together. They all trained in one place. But yes, you're right. Yeah. So we have flight director Gene Krantz, played by Ed Harris, we mentioned. If you want to hear an interesting story about Gene Krantz, the other podcast on the network called American Catholic History did an episode number 42 on Gene, who's Catholic. Obviously, a lot of these guys are Catholic, but Gene had an interesting story that they told on that episode. But Gene's played by Ed Harris, and there's this ritual that he had where his wife made him a new vest for every flight. So he's wearing this vest, and he wears that vest the whole flight. I thought that was a really nice character moment that they gave him.
Did they explain why it was white? I can't remember in the movie if they say why it's a white vest.
No.
So all the flight directors have a different color. So Gene Krantz's shift was the white shift. And I know Glenn Lundy's was black, and I can't remember the other. There were two other flight directors,
gold,
and I don't know what.
Too.
One was gold, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was Jerry Griffin or Milt Windler. So I thought that was interesting.
Nice.
And Ed Harris plays him brilliantly. I mean, Gene Krantz is still living. He is 88, I think.
Wow.
He's still in the area, and I spoke to him once on the telephone. And he is no chit chat. He is very direct. And if you have a chance, go read his book. Go read everything you can get on him. He's just, very, very smart man.
Awesome.
So.
Cool. So we have the launch. The number 5 booster goes out prematurely during the launch, and so they keep going. And they say, it looks like we've had our glitch for this mission.
Can I just before we go there, I just the everything leading up to the launch. There's the putting the medical stuff on and putting their suits on, but walking over and having a guy put his foot in your shoulder and tighten.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yep.
That's like if you're scared when they belt you in for a roller coaster ride. That's like, and we're going to shut the door and you guys are bye, and that was filmed so well.
See you in a week.
Single one of, yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up.
No, that's good. I liked when Swiggert's like they're about to put the helmet on. No, it was Fred Hayes, about to put his helmet on. And the guy's like, oh, wait, Fred. And he holds out his hand to spit his gum into. Otherwise, that gum's gonna be stuck in there for hours.
I do know this one. So when I first started working at UH Clear Lake and I started meeting people, I asked them about that movie, and they had that. What did the astronauts say about it? And the person I was talking to said that she was on the bus with Fred Hayes and the others. They bussed him over to see it in the theater, and the only thing he said coming out of that theater was, "I did not chew gum." Because the actor Bill Paxton chews gum, and he chews it in all these scenes. I see it. I can see him chewing in a lot of the Earth scenes. And that was the only thing they told me was Fred Hayes' only quote after seeing the movie for the first time was, "I did not chew gum."
That's awesome. So I'm guessing that he did throw up on the flight, though, because he didn't deny
it. He will say that he had a little indigestion.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So I mentioned before they have like this whole thing where they do this live broadcast, but in fact nobody's actually watching. And then we get to at 50 minutes into the movie, I actually stopped and looked at it. This is when we have stirring the oxygen tank, and so what happens is oxygen, which obviously they need for both fuel and for air. in the cold of space, it semi-liquefies. It has to be stirred up to be kept from freezing solid. And so they had stirrers in it. And so they told Swigert, Mission Control told them, make sure to stir the tank. And Shelley, you had a link that you sent us that has all of the mission audio from the very beginning to the end.
Yeah.
And I jumped, and you could jump ahead to different parts of the mission. Obviously, I jumped right to that moment to listen to what it was really like. And it was so routine. It was just, and they don't know anything has gone wrong for a while. It's like, hey, I'm getting some weird readings here. Instrumentation looks a little, might be messed up. And then we get to Houston. We have a problem, or we've had a problem, as you corrected.
Yeah. And they did not use that live audio that is available today. It's called ApolloInRealTime.org. And I think there's 3 missions already loaded. And the ApolloInRealTime.org was created in, I want to say 2020. I think they loaded it just in the last 2 years. They went and pulled the audio from the National Archives, from the investigation files, and had it digitized and scrubbed and built this amazing website.
Oh, yeah.
I spent probably 2 hours just listening to it last night.
Yep.
But the one that they used for this movie actually came from the ECOM station, and it's Cy Liebergott, and in the movie it's played by Clint Howard. But Cy Liebergott had taken his reel-to-reels and had them converted and gave them to Ron Howard. I think when the Jerry Bostick and Glenn Lundy and they got involved in the technical advising of the show, I think that's when they kind of got all those guys together to talk about it, and they found out he had that. But we had CDs. They're CDs then. I don't know what they have now in the archives, but we had the CDs and you could listen to it. And but if you love this movie, you need to go and watch this website, Apollo 13 in real time, and listen to that moment. It's at 55 hours, 54 minutes. And listen to the difference in the way they talk in real life versus the way they act in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can hear the total difference in the tone of voice.
And what's nice is it's not just audio. They also have some visual stuff, some of the representations of the feeds that they would have been looking at, like the various data feeds and stuff like that. It's really a great website. Definitely check it out. And I like at one point when they're all kind of starting to get a little frantic in the movie, Gene Krantz does, stop, work the problem, stop guessing at the solution, and it's really a nice moment. Let's settle down, step back, stop flailing at it, let's work the problem, find the solution, stop guessing, start working what we know how to do. I mean, how often have I said to one of my kids, since watching this movie, and I wasn't married then, but how often I said to my kids, work the problem, stop flailing at it, slow down, calm down, work it out.
I would just like to say I love the way Mission Control looked. The whole thing with the different guys, the different actors they had playing things. And Ed Harris, I love everything he does. I don't think there's anything Ed Harris has done that I don't really, really like.
Yeah.
But he is great. And the different personalities, you got the bald geeky guy, that's like trying to figure out. And then the one guy who's like, it wasn't built for that. I just want to say we didn't design it for that. So
the contractor.
it's my fault.
Yeah.
The contractor. That's not what it's for. And also you have the dichotomy of the surgeon and we can't set up with measles, yet everyone in there is smoking like a chimney. Like there's just smoke everywhere because the whole Mission Control was really cool. And the tension and how they knew what they were doing, but then when things started going wrong, they're like, okay, we got to, figure this out. And it was cool. And it was neat to kind of learn a little bit about how that stuff kind of works. And all the checks, we got to, everybody tell me if you're a go. Is everyone a go? It was really kind of neat.
Well, it really is teamwork. and NASA was always looked like a well-oiled machine, even if it wasn't. So I did like some of that, whether it was real or not, where when they're on Vox, they speak a certain way, but then when they're off Vox, like, what do you mean by that? But when they're on, and that was both sides too.
Right.
Both the astronauts up in space and Mission Control, because they were bantering with themselves, but when they would go on Vox, well, this is the problem, Odyssey, so it was just they knew how to be professional and then also fall apart at the same time.
Yeah.
It's one of the things you learn when you learn to be a pilot, even like a civilian pilot. When you're on air, when you're on like air traffic control channel or whatever, you have to be professional, calm, direct, clear. When you're off that, you can be whatever. But when you're on, and so that would have been ingrained in all these guys. So I really love that moment. That was pretty fun.
Well, you mentioned, Michael, that the Mission Control, that was a replica, and they built it to scale to the original. The original is at NASA Johnson Space Center. You can see it. You can go on a tram tour, and see it. Sorry. When you go to see it, you're standing up in the viewing area where they showed the families watching. And I've actually seen a shuttle launch from the viewing section. But I've been also on the floor of the historic Mission Control. I want to say it's a National Trust property, National Historic.
Oh, wow.
It's spot on. I mean, there were guys that still would come into the archives and tell me, we couldn't tell the difference.
Wow.
We used to have a researcher. He actually has one of the cabinets from the original because, it was there. It had been broken apart, had been put back together. And we always said when we went on the tours, we always said there's two things wrong with Mission Control, the way they have it set up on the tour. Number one is it's missing the ashtrays. It is missing ashtrays. Number two, they did not have a red phone sitting in that room.
That's funny. So you mentioned Cy Liebergott. So there's a scene where he's talking to Gene, and he's like, we need to close the valves. We need to close the valves. And Gene's like, if we close the valves, we're not going to land. And Cy is the one who kind of gives everybody a reality check. He's like, at this point, it's about saving the ship. It's saving their lives. It's like the moon is gone. Like we're not going to the moon. And that's really where you see them. Everybody kind of gets the clue, like, oh, that's where we are. This isn't a let's fix the problem and go to the moon. This is a let's figure out how we're going to save these guys.
Yeah.
So that was a really key moment in this movie.
Yeah, and in real life, he would have had to explain what it meant when he said, "Flight, we need to close the reactive valves." Everybody would have known, and that's one of the That's one of the things I love about the way they wrote the script and filmed it, is that they took this scientific jargon that everybody understood, like they were speaking Klingon, and they found a way to educate the audience so that we would understand the emotional connection. And you throw that score in there. Who was that? James Horner? And it's like,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think, Horner always works with Howard.
Yeah.
Horner and Howard. Well, he did anyway, till he passed away.
Yeah.
But it's the old C-3PO trick. He has to answer R2-D2 in ways that you'll know what R2-D2 said. So they have to question it by explaining it, and it just sounds natural. But then when you got up to the astronauts and they told them what to do, they're all like, they didn't have to say it. You already knew, and they see in their eyes, they're taking the moon away from us. A quick question was, Swaggart going to be able to walk on the moon? Because they talked about how the LEM was just for two people. So he was never going to walk on the moon.
There was always one guy who stayed in the command module.
Behind.
Okay.
Michael Collins was the guy on Apollo 11. And he actually wrote a really good book, which I
never
read.
heard of him. Like, okay, I see how that works.
That's how it works.
Wow.
But you feel bad, and you feel bad for the guy because he's the one who gets left up there. But if, he's got to get them all back home.
You hope that they get a future mission where they get to walk. That's the idea.
You talk about the loneliest man in the world, because when they're up there in that command module by themselves and they go around the dark side of the moon, there's no contact with anyone.
That was one of the really cool parts about Michael Collins' book, is talking about. I think the book was called like the Far Side of the Moon or something along those lines, like the existential moment where that is like the loneliest man in the universe at that moment. He is, because everybody is on the every person in the universe, every human person in the universe is on the other side of the moon from you. You know, it just blows your mind. The aliens are like below you in the secret moon base, but all the humans are on the other side of the moon.
Yeah, Superman and the Zog and those guys.
Yeah, those guys are all out in the other direction. But
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel's over there somewhere. You know how it is. You know how it is.
all the secret stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Captain America is secretly there too.
Yeah, frozen. So they have to shut down. They realize they don't have the power. This is the other thing, is from a 2022 perspective, never mind a 1995 perspective, how much power they needed to run this ship to get things going. I mean, never mind the computing power. That was just I have more computing power in my watch than the entire mission control, never mind in the spaceship. But the amount of electricity was so small. Like the battery that I used to recharge my phone probably has more power in it than they had to work with to get that thing going.
Do we know what like the 12 watts is in bars on my phone? Like what percentage of charge, so I can relate to how much it took?
Well, your phone is like 5,000 is like 5 amps. That's your phone is 5 amps.
Oh, okay. That's it.
They had 20 amps.
All right.
To power up the entire ship. They had 20 amps to work with. I mean, think of it. That's like 5 of your phone. That's insane.
Yeah. What is it? Oh, jeez.
Isn't that incredible?
No, it is funny, and how they were like just, every little thing that they could squeeze. And
that in like, we need to move the program from the flight computer in the Odyssey to the flight computer in Aquarius. When they said move the program, they're not talking about copying it to a disk. They're write it down, and then do the calculations, doing like
slide rules and everything.
Yes.
I'm like,
pencils with erasers and erasing the calculations and then putting it in again. Like, I mean, it is mind-boggling that they took this technology to the moon. I mean, amazing. It's like just blows my mind. It's awesome.
Which makes me look forward to what is Artemis going to look like.
Oh, well, you get a preview of that looking at the SpaceX Crew Dragon. Like they get the iPad touchscreen, boop, 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 boop. It looks like the Enterprise up there. It's wild. So
that's going to be fun.
I am so looking forward to that. That's going to be so awesome. So we do get them. They get to the moon. They have to go around the moon without landing. And there's that moment where it's like, it wouldn't be that hard to kind of, like, it's right there. Like, they're only half joking. Like, we could just slip away, go down and come back up again. Obviously they can't, but just, you could see that longing in Jim Lovell's face. Like, it's right there. I could reach out and touch it. It was pretty awesome.
Question.
It's hard to be heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Is there really a Mount Marilyn?
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. So he got to name the mountain after his wife.
That is like every forgotten anniversary and birthday after that. I named a mountain on the moon for you, all right?
After you,
yes.
all right? Just cut me some slack.
Yeah. I mean, come on. What other husbands have done that? So they have to save all the energy. We get the famous apocryphal line, failure is not an option, which, Shelley, you said Gene Krantz never said.
Never said it. Nope.
Never said it.
Wow.
But it's not like he said failure is an option. He
just never said that.
I did find online where the phrase came from. It says that the scriptwriters came down to Clear Lake and they were interviewing Jerry Bostick. And they said, well, what are the people in Mission Control really like? Weren't there times when everybody, or at least a few people, just panicked? And Jerry said, no. When bad things happen, we just calmly laid out all the options, and failure was not one of them. We never panicked. We never gave up finding a solution. And that's the moment when it says Bill Broyles got up and was like, that's it. That's the tagline for the whole movie. Failure is not an option. Now we just have to figure out who's going to say it in the movie. And they assigned it to Krantz because Krantz represents all of those flight directors.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, they imply that Krantz is in the mission control for the entire week or whatever, but obviously they would have gone on and off shift. He's like, he can't be there 24/7. There was the other guys that were there as well. So, and then like we mentioned, we had Mattingly. They put him in the simulator to kind of figure out the procedure for how to get the ship powered up again because they've powered it down. Famously was the fixing the carbon scrubbers, that scene where they have two different sizes of carbon scrubbers, one for the Aquarius, one for Odyssey, and they have a square peg and a round hole, and they dump a box of stuff on the table. This is everything they have access to on the ship. Now you need to make this fit in that. I mean, I love that. That was a great scene. That's such a great, iconic American ingenuity. This is what NASA was all about, was making things work that seemed impossible, doing the impossible.
And at the same time, government contracts, and how insane it is that you would have two separate contractors working on vehicles that link together, but don't have standardized parts.
Right. The interchangeable carbon scrubbers. I'm going to guess that every ship designed after that would have had interchangeable carbon scrubbers, even though we don't do 2-part ships anymore like that. But yeah, I'm going to guess Artemis's landing craft will have the same carbon scrubber. I find it's ironic, obviously, that Mattingly got bumped from the flight, but it's Bill Hayes who actually gets sick on the trip. He's got a cold or a flu or something like that, which is not helped by it being freezing.
Right.
And they start bickering with each other over whose fault it is, whether it's Swigert did something wrong or Hayes, and they start yelling. And then, like you mentioned, Shelley, or no, you mentioned Joanne. As soon as Mission Control comes on, they're yelling at each other, and then they go on like, Mission Control, yeah, everything's fine here. We're doing, it's very calm. It's very. I like that.
Well, yeah, in the middle of the argument when Lovell is like saying, we're not doing this right now. Mission Control calls and like, are we on Vox? Okay, good.
Right, exactly.
Because he doesn't want them to,
of course.
Each one is trying to spare the other one from what they know is going on. Right. So, and that was the only thing that got me a little bit, but I know it's protocol and stuff like that. But, these guys up there weren't stupid. They knew that they must have been running around in Houston trying to figure all this out. Yeah. And Houston's trying to keep them calm. And they're like, it's probably like the worst thing that can happen. Don't patronize us. Tell us what's going on.
They got nothing but time up there to sit around and think about what's going on. I mean, that they had days where they're just sitting there in this tight little space. You can't step outside. That's just.
Yeah, because the LEM wasn't built for travel. The LEM was built for one thing, go from ship to bottom, and then the other part comes out and goes back to ship. Right. So it was, I'm sure, a small compartment. Well, you get 3 guys in there instead of 2.
Well, even just the idea that you had 3 guys in the command module for a week, it boggles the mind how like they just cram these guys in there and they live there for a week, in this tiny space. It's just mind-boggling. And I mean, the space shuttle after that was like luxurious travel. It was like a cruise ship compared to it. So speaking of famous people showing up, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but one of the Mission Control guys, Max Grodenchik from Deep Space Nine. It was great seeing him out of makeup. He's in makeup on Deep Space Nine, so it's awesome to see him. I'm a big Star Trek fan. He would have been. The show was in production at the time, so he would have been a star on that at the time.
But one that wasn't a star, Eric Broadstreet. Yeah. He was just one of the Mission Control guys. Every once in a while he had a line, but I knew exactly who. I was like, yeah, that's Eric Broadstreet.
Now, where do I know? What would I know him from now?
Modern Family.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Did y'all see who they wanted to play Jim Lovell?
No, who?
Okay, so imagine Jim Lovell being played by Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
No.
That's who Lovell wanted.
Mm-hmm. That's a hard no.
Well, of course he did. Or Cary Grant or Robert Redford or some unbelievably gorgeous guy who went. I think Brad Pitt should play me, really. I mean, if we need.
Well, you know who else was offered the role? John Travolta was offered the role.
I can't see that.
Yeah, I can't see it either.
No.
But Mike, you mentioned Brad Pitt. They offered him the role of Jim Swigert, and he turned it down.
Yep.
How about John Cusack as Fred Hayes?
Oh,
I like Cusack. I don't mind.
Could have been.
I like him a lot. I love the late Bill Paxton, but I can't get away from his portrayal in Aliens. Just being so goofy.
Game over, man.
It's like, oh my. So I always have trouble. But he was great in this.
And he was in Titanic, wasn't he?
Bill Paxton, was he?
No.
Which one was in Titanic? That's the other one.
Bill for me. Bill Paxton will always. I'll remember him from Weird Science.
Yes.
Which was
Science.
such a
He was
funny movie.
He was in Tombstone. We're getting off track.
Yeah.
But was Swaggart was portrayed as definitely feeling like the third wheel. Like, am I measuring up? I mean, I mean, that might be a nuance, Shelley. That's hard to know how historic that is. But like, and that he was definitely self-conscious.
Absolutely.
When he was accused, about what was, what were you doing? What were the readings? Do you remember the readings when you stirred the tanks and all that?
Yeah. Well, and
Right.
remember too that in the beginning when they're saying that Mattingly has to come off the mission, he's like, when we can read each other's minds, we know each other's thoughts, we've worked together, we've eaten together, we've been together basically in this tiny capsule doing 3-hour simulations at a time, day after day after day. We know exactly. We can predict everything about one another. And now you're going to throw an unknown into there. And here's Swaggart. He's had maybe half the time in the simulators, and he's got to be brought up to speed in 2 to 3 days. And he doesn't know their personalities. There's a psychological component. All of these astronauts go through a psychological component to match them up too. So I thought they did a beautiful job of showing that in the movie. The acting in here is just brilliant. And isn't it funny that when it came to the Oscars, that only 2 of them received nominations and didn't win for the acting? It was Ed Harris for supporting actor and Kathleen Quinlan for supporting actress.
Oh, wow.
And the writing was nominated, but it did not win. It didn't look up who won.
It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Screenplay. It won for Best Sound and Best Film Editing. But it was nominated in a bunch of dramatic score, screenplay based on an adaptation. So yeah,
visual effects. It lost to the movie Babe about a pig.
Oh my gosh.
Visual effects.
That's different. Oh, and I got to roll back. Bill Paxton was in Titanic. He was the operator he was on the ship with not on the Titanic, but in the real time when they're going to look for the Titanic.
He was the goofy guy who, all right.
The I don't know what they call oceanographer.
Right, yeah.
That's
the treasure hunter.
And of course, exactly.
Oh, okay.
And of course, I just saw him in Twister the other day. So
great movie.
Another great movie.
So we mentioned when Mrs. Lovell met Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and it wasn't Alan Shepard, it was Buzz Aldrin, asked if they were in the space program too. Arguably 2 of the most famous guys in the world in 1970. And the other thing I liked too was the news coverage that they showed, which looked like it was actual footage from that era. That was constantly like all the most dire possibilities that could happen, and like the poor families are sitting there watching this. Well, it could burn up in the atmosphere on the way in, or it could skip off into space and they'll die in the depths and cold of space.
I don't even know why we're trying to get them home. Really, they're dead already.
Right.
Well, now here we go. Here's my boomer stuff.
Yep.
Jules Bergman, that was ABC.
Uh-huh.
Okay. You had Walter Cronkite on CBS. You had Frank McGee and Huntley and Brinkley on NBC. And all of them had these, especially Jules Bergman was fun because he's the guy who brought out the blowtorch so that you could see, and that is actual footage.
Oh my gosh.
He did. They would have replicas, and they'd be showing you by hand how this is all going to work, and then they'd have funny little graphics that they would do to help people understand some of the science of it. But all that was that. You knew which station you were watching, and there were only 3 at the time.
Yep.
And you knew who was on what station and what they were going to do.
There were 3 when we were growing up, too.
Yes.
They were only 3 much later. I remember 3, no remotes. But the Cronkite...
We had 4. We had PBS.
Oh, well, yes, there was PBS, but that hardly counted. It was always hard to tune in because it was like fuzzy. But anyway, the Cronkite parts were great, especially when they, in the early part of the movie, when they landed on the moon and he taking his glasses off and literally in tears. It really helped capture, this was a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Walter Cronkite was good for that because he reacted, even though he was very stoic all the time and very no nonsense. When something happened, he would actually react to it. So you see him react, especially when they're walking on the moon. John Kennedy, when he died, that was very emotional. Anytime there was something, he would break like the fourth wall and just show you how he was feeling. So everybody kind of felt, could be okay to feel the same way. He was very good for that.
I don't think we've had a moment like Apollo 11 and landing on the moon, that was such a universal good moment for everyone around the world, just except for the Russians. But everyone else was pretty happy at that moment, and just that unifying moment. I mean, I can't think of anything since then that has really unified us in the same way.
Not one that wasn't born of tragedy.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, they do like some sort of recovery from, uniting us behind the World Trade Center or something like that.
Right.
And different things. But this was, I suppose you could say the tragedy of the lost astronauts and things like that. But still, it was just this great accomplishment.
Yeah. Yep. And I can't wait to see, when Artemis lands on the moon again, I'd love to see something similar, but who knows where we'll be then.
We're not in the same space.
No, I know.
It's a different time now. Travel, technology, it's just a different. In those days, this was all science fiction stuff.
Well, and we have
True
CGI
science
that's better than what the real, the watching the real stuff, and so I think that kind of takes the edge off of it.
Oh please, I don't want to hear again. They're doing it as soundstage.
That's right.
Please.
So I liked it. So at the when they're coming back into to orbit and coming back into re-entry, and they have this montage of people around the world, and there was that scene of Pope Paul leading 50,000 people in prayers for the astronauts in St. Peter's Square. And I wonder if that was actually true. I would guess it really did happen.
I know that he prayed for them. I don't know if he did it in St. Peter's Square.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have just mentioned their names at an audience, and that's good enough. It didn't have to happen like while they were landing.
Right. What was it? April 16th?
17th. I mentioned to you, was it my anniversary? 50, let's see, it was 29 years to the day before my wife and I were married, April 17th.
You picked an auspicious day. It was was a good omen.
They took off on St. Gemma Galgani's feast day exactly 67 years after she died. Exactly.
Wow. That's wild.
Well, there is a prayer. He did pray for them.
He did.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Awesome.
he did on, what's the date?
Because I was wondering if that was the
15th
Wednesday.
of April.
The 15th.
Okay,
yeah.
so 2 days before they landed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But
So
it doesn't say an audience, though.
so they when they're coming in, there's this moment where they're getting into the command seats, like into the command module seats, and keep in mind, and it might be a subtle point, the leftmost seat is the pilot seat. That's the pilot seat, and Lovell kind of just by habit climbs into it because it's his ship. He's got the controls, and then he sees Swaggart look over, like
a sad puppy.
Yeah. And so he's like, "No, you've got this." And they switch, like you're the pilot. And there was that's that moment where he's basically saying, "I'm taking you off the hook. Like, I believe in you. I don't believe that you screwed up. You take us home." And that was a really nice moment there. I really did like that.
Wasn't it the custom, though, that the commander would fly to the moon and then the pilot who stayed in the thing would fly them back? Isn't that somewhere? I don't know if I read that somewhere.
That he did the reentry? I think in fact that's what it was, is that Jack's supposed to be in that seat. And that
at that time.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that if he had lost confidence in him, then he would have been replacing him. And that was a sign that he had not lost confidence in him.
Yeah. Jack Swigert was the command module pilot. And that was that cone shaped piece that was at the top. And then they separated and they turned around and they went and they got the lunar module or the LEM and pulled it out. And then they jettisoned that and landed. But anything that's piloting the command module is Jack Swigert. And then Jim Lovell was the commander of the entire mission, and he was the pilot for the lunar module to land on the moon. Right. He was the Neil Armstrong character.
Well, it was actually it was Fred Hayes who was the lunar module pilot.
Was Fred? Was he? Oh, I'm sorry. Look at me. It's late here.
That's fine. No, but
okay.
Lovell was the overall mission commander.
Yes.
So you had the two pilots, and Lovell would be the first man out of the, out of the LEM and step on the moon. I mean, that's his prerogative.
My husband was funny when we were watching it. He said, "Oh, I forgot they turn around and go get it."
Yes. Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, that's how they did things in those days."
Yeah, and they had to go they eject it, and then they had to okay, we got to go get it. Like where is it?
Right.
And go, and how he kind of scratches, almost like a bad parking job.
Yes.
Okay, we got it. Good enough.
We're there. We're there.
And there'd be no sound in space, I don't think, but whatever.
And then at the end, I mean, it's Krantz who gets the not literal the final line, but he gets the last kind of the last say, where he says, "I believe this is going to be our finest hour." And in a sense, I think that's what Ron Howard is trying to say is the mission was a failure, right? The mission was to land on the moon. The mission was a failure, but yet it was the finest hour of NASA because of how they rose to the challenge. Landing on the moon was the big challenge, was the big success. But this, dealing with the unexpected disaster and coming out of it with everybody alive, getting home, that showed their finest hour, even over the landing on the moon. So I thought that was a really nice sentiment to put in there right at the end of the movie. So that brings us to the end of the movie. Any last thoughts? Anything we didn't cover that you wanted to cover or talk about in this movie, or final thoughts about the movie itself? Joanne?
Again, this was Gemini, Apollo, Mercury, when I was growing up, captured my imagination. And, I wanted to do that. I wanted to go up there. Then I found out I had motion sickness and no way was ever going to do anything like that. But it gave me an appreciation for sciences, even though I went in a way different direction. It gave me an appreciation for science and technology. And I think that's what led me later on in life to be very good with, want to know more about technology, not be afraid of it, do it, because I saw all this growing up as a child.
Yeah.
And it was magical because times were different. And I just can't, when you're an ordinary person living in an ordinary world and you're watching people go into space and go to the moon, it was just magical.
Right. I love the idea that not only was there direct technological advancement from things invented for the space program, there was the inspiration that it provided. And that's, I mean, a lot of what we have in our lives today is a result of that inspiration, not just direct technology, but just inspiration. And that's one of the reasons why it's important that we go to space, because we need to be inspired to look up, to see what's out there, to strive. You mentioned that it inspired you to someday to become an astronaut. I actually took the first steps on that journey when I was in high school. I entered Navy ROTC, and I was studying aerospace engineering at Boston University. That eventually, for many reasons, didn't work out, obviously. But I'm so grateful that I took those steps and that I was inspired by that. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that inspired me to want to go more and do more. And now I'm doing this, talking about this sort of thing. But I hope new generations are inspired by SpaceX and Blue Origin and all that.
And there's one line in the movie where they say, now this, what is it? The computer's now we have a computer that's housed in a building.
We could fit it in a room.
Yes. And my husband and I are sitting there going, and now we can hold it in our hands.
Yes, exactly. How about you, Mike? Any last thoughts?
It's one of the check marks for this film, which there are many, is that it's just rewatchable. Every different scene that you come up, oh yes, I like this scene. This is great. Oh, I like when he gets his vest and puts it on. Oh, that's cool. I like it when they dump all that stuff off, and this is what we have in the LEM, and this is all we can build this thing out of. All the different stuff that they have, all the different things of them in space. The only scene I don't like is when he throws up. I get a little gross for me. But other than that, and even the what happens to the urine? Oh my goodness, there's so Jim loves those guys. All those astronauts' urine is floating in space somewhere. But yeah, I just overall, it's just I rewatched it happily yesterday in preparation for this.
Nice. Yeah, you talk about it being rewatchable. Apart from some, older CGI, some of the special effects look a little older. This movie is still a classic, still good, still it just holds up. Yeah, you're right.
And it looks like 1970.
It does.
The everything that you feel like you're in 1970, but seeing incredibly excellent shots of them in space. And
Shelley, how about you?
I think I said most of what I wanted to say, especially about the writing and the music here. But I'm drawn to Glenn Lundy's funeral because I didn't attend it because of COVID. I watched it online, and his son gave an amazing talk at the end, testimony of his father, and they did mention Apollo 13 in it. And so I just wanted to tell you that Ken Mattingly told Glenn Lundy's son that when your dad came in and took over the mess, he just brought calm to the situation. And as we've mentioned, Gene Krantz is the face of flight directors, but Glenn Lundy came in and was there present at the time of or came in right after it happened. That was a shift change, actually. And another person in Mission Control told him that when your dad entered the room, there was an immediate and profound calming presence. And he collected information, and for hours he made decisions in a way that was somewhat otherworldly. And then he shared that his father told him, "Son, I want to share something with you. That the best work I've ever done as a professional was that night on Apollo 13 mission. I spent hours making decisions, sometimes with little more than my instinct or intuition to go on, doing everything I could to save those 3 souls aboard the vessel. None of all the simulations and everything they had done had prepared them adequately for what was going on. And yet every choice I made turned out to be the right one." And he told his son, "Of this I am absolutely certain. When I replay that night over and over in my mind, I was not alone. I did not know what to call it or how to describe it at the time, but now I do. It is absolutely clear to me that there was a presence in the room with me the whole time, guiding me, nudging me, helping me find the best path forward, and making it clear that was the path to follow." So I just wanted to remind y'all that I think faith played a huge role. And in all of this, it was our greatest moment, but God was with them the entire time.
Right.
And these were men of faith and science.
Yes. A generation of faith and science. That was a nice thing is when we saw the priest there with Marilyn, there as they're waiting, the faith was a comfort. They didn't make it a big deal in the movie, but there was a presence there, a comfort for them in their faith. And so that was nice to see that they included that, and the Pope Paul, as well.
And when they were on the ship, where they all bowed their heads in prayer.
Yep, that's true.
When they were all on deck, nothing was ever said. It was just you saw that, and that's not something it's rarer nowadays to see that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Thank you, Shelley. That was nice. I like that. So that should do it for our discussion this time. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of movies and TV shows, including Sedani, Susan L., James W., Leslie H., and John and Greta C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you think about what we had to say about Apollo 13 and about the movie itself. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page, or send an email to secrets@sqpn.com, or visit the new StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Until next time, Joanne Mercier, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Apollo 13.
Thanks, Dom.
Shelley Kelly, thank you as well.
Thank you.
And Mike Denz, thank you for joining us.
Dom, it was not a problem.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of movies and TV shows on StarQuest. And remember, failure is never an option.